Hi everyone, thanks for being here today. Let me start with a story. Last year, I spent 7 months applying for housing. 7 months. My roommates and I sent application after application, toured places, and dealt with landlords who treated us like we were barely worth their time. Eventually, we found a house, but it's far from campus, and even with 6 of us splitting rent, it's hard to afford. And I know I'm not the only one. Housing stress hits almost every student I know. Some of my friends are stuck in overpriced dorms that feel like prisons. Others are in tiny apartments where they barely fit. And some, like some of my friends, had to move back home and commute 2 hours a day because she couldn't afford to live near campus. 2 hours a day. As a second year student who's been through this, I can tell you this isn't just inconvenient. It's a problem that impacts our mental health, our grades, and our entire experience at Cal Poly. That's why today I'm arguing that Cal Poly needs to take action on the off-campus housing crisis. Specifically, they need to partner with developers to build affordable housing, advocate for rent control in San Luis Obispo, and expand financial aid programs to help students now. Here's how we'll break it down. First, I'll show you how housing stress affects students like us. Then, I'll um, then I'll share long-term solutions Cal Poly can implement. Finally, I'll explain why immediate action is critical for students who need help right now. My first point is housing stress is messing with our mental health and well-being. So, let's start with how housing issues impact us as students. For me, finding housing was a nightmare. My 6 roommates and I spent months applying for places before finally securing a house with a difficult landlord. Even splitting rent 6 ways, it's still way more expensive than it should be. And we're not alone. The Cal Poly housing report shows that 41% of students that live off campus, or 41% of students live off campus, and most of them spend more than half of their income on rent. Think about that. More than half of what you make goes straight to your landlord. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development defines affordable housing as costing no more than 30% of your income. So most of us are way past that threshold. That's not just stressful, it's unsustainable. And the stress starts early. As freshmen, my friends and I were already panicking about where we'd live our second year. Um, The Cal Poly Student Affairs Report highlights how housing insecurity affects students as early as their first year and gets worse over time. For some, this anxiety even pushes them to move back home or take on extra work just to make ends meet. I have a friend who had to move home because she couldn't afford to stay in SLO. She commuted over 2 hours each day, and eventually the stress forced her to drop a class. That's not what college should be like. Housing stress doesn't just drain your bank account. It impacts your mental health, your grades, and your ability to enjoy college. So, what can Cal Poly do about it? Let's move on to the solutions. Cal Poly can fix this by partnering with developers and supporting rent control. The good news is other schools have figured this out and we can learn from them. Take UC Davis, for example. They partner with developers to build affordable housing near campus, and rents for students drop by 30%. This partnership, highlighted in the Journal of Housing and Higher Education, is a proven way to tackle housing shortages. If UC Davis can do it, why can't we? Another solution is rent control. The San Luis Obispo Policy Review found that cities with rent control policies stabilized housing costs within 2 years, and students saw the biggest benefits. Right now, landlords in SLO can raise the rent as much as they want, knowing students have zero choice. Rent caps could stop this from happening. Imagine signing a lease and knowing your rent won't double next year. That peace of mind would let us focus on what really matters, our education. Cal Poly Corporation could also directly invest in subsidized housing projects for students. According to Financial Assistance Quarterly, universities that take this approach see higher retention rates and improved student satisfaction. Building affordable housing is good for students and good for the school. These are long-term solutions that will take time to implement. So what about the students who need help right now? Well, we're going to need more financial aid and emergency housing support right now. One immediate way Cal Poly can help students is by increasing housing-specific financial aid. Right now, a lot of us are working long hours just to pay rent. That's time we should be spending on an internship or studying. According to Financial Assistance Quarterly, even a small increase, like 10% in housing stipends, could stabilize living conditions for hundreds of students each year. This could make a huge difference for students who are barely scraping by. Another important step is improving emergency housing programs. The Cal Poly Student Affairs Report highlights that many students don't even know these programs exist, and those who do find out they're underfunded or unavailable. Here's a personal example. One of my roommates couldn't make rent and ended up couch surfing for 2 weeks. He reached out to emergency housing, but there wasn't any space available. No student should have to go through that. By expanding emergency housing programs and increasing funding, Cal Poly can make sure that no student has to choose between staying in school and keeping a roof over their head. So, here's the big picture. We've talked about how the housing crisis impacts students, what Cal Poly can do to provide long-term solutions, and why immediate action is so important. This isn't just about housing, it's about making sure students can succeed, thrive, and enjoy their time here. By partnering with developers, supporting rent control, and expanding financial aid, Cal Poly can make a real difference. Let's push for a future where no student has to spend months stressing about housing or splitting rent with 6 people just to stay in school. Thank you for listening, and I hope we can all work together to make these changes happen.